I'm joined here in a little less formal situation by our two candidates today. Jon Doemel is on my left and Gordon Hintz is on my right. Gentlemen, thank you both for making time to join us here today.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
Just to run through the format of today's candidates forum, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to provide an opening statement. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Winnebago County Executive. After that, we'll have a series of questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their answer, and after the first person goes, the second person will get a chance to answer. I will use moderator discretion, and we may have some rebuttal if necessary, okay? The timekeeper is Grace Burdick with the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. She's down right here in the front. She'll give you warnings when you have a minute left and 30 seconds left as well, okay? I hope I don't have to cut anyone off. I haven't had to do it yet in any of our forums with the Chamber. Hopefully, we'll be able to get about 9 to 12 questions in the hour that we have, and then we'll wrap things up with closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes at that point. All right, so let's get into the introductions, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order, and then we'll reverse it for the closing statements. So, Jon Doemel, if you could, tell us who you are and why you're running for Winnebago County Executive.
Yeah, I'm Jon Doemel, running for Winnebago County Executive. I am the incumbent. I've been there for 4 years. We've done a lot of good things in the last 4 years. Kind of making sense of the organization. So Winnebago County was the third county executive county in the state of Wisconsin. So we actually went to county executive and a citizen referendum before we had a county administrator. And county administrator is really where you kind of build that professional level of government. It's where you get a director of administration, director of public works, director of health and human services to keep those segments of the government kind of in line and working together. When I was elected, it was still operating almost like an administrative coordinator county. Our committees were running the operations of the county, and it was a whole bunch of silos. One of the great examples is my first year in office, we had this big storm that just missed AirVenture, and we had lines down everywhere. So we were trying to manage the 3 different power companies that sit in Winnebago County, and our highway department was out there taking care of trees with heave-hoeing with their backs. We had 2 log grapplers in the county, so we didn't even have an equipment list to know that parks and facilities both had the right tools for the job. So it's really bringing the county together to make it an organizational structure, and then going after a budget to find out what our programs are, what do they do, are they mandated, bringing agenda item reports, making sure that we're doing fiscal notes, making sure that everything makes sense in the county to make it an organizational function and an organizational government. So we've done a lot of work with that in the last 4 years to get us set up with facility conditions and really a health assessment of the county that had never done a checkup before. Going through our first recodification since 1982, we found a lot of things in the state statute that we weren't exactly following. Parks Commission, we were supposed to set up when we broke 150,000 people in our county, which happened in the 90s. We just recently found that, and now we're following state statute and doing some good things. So it's been the whole physical checkup, and now we're finally getting ready for us to drive this thing. And the biggest thing is we are not through this economic storm yet. So now that we have this organization that's functional, it's time to increase the amount of needs that we are actually going out to meet, to make sure that we're getting our offices, to make sure that we're collaborating with everybody, and we've done a lot of work with that. And I think I'm the right person for the job to make sure that we can get through this storm and that everybody is fed and remained housed, and there's a lot of stress out there.
Gordon, your opening statement, 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, I'm Gordon Hintz, born and raised in Oshkosh. I live here with my wife, Liz, and my 2 children. I currently work for the Wisconsin Laborers District Council. It's a construction trade union of more than 9,000 active and retired members in the construction industry, doing highway, sewer, tunnel, bridge, demolition, renewable energy projects. A lot of our contractor partners are C.R. Meyer, C.D. Smith, Myron, Bolt, and a lot of other smaller contractors. I do issue issues that are important to workforce development for the union and for our contractors. So a lot of workforce development, a lot of recruitment. Before that, I spent more than 20 years in public service at the federal, state, and local level, including 16 in the Wisconsin State Assembly, where I was the minority leader for 4 years and did 3 years on the state budget committee. I think the work in the state legislature is important because a lot of the county government is mandated by the state, so I have familiarity with a lot of state policy and programs that are mandated by the state. In addition, my experience as a minority leader made me manage and deal with 36 diverse personalities and staff, trying to get them working in the same direction with goal, message, and strategy. I worked in local government for the city of Long Beach, California, as a budget analyst and as a management assistant, originally wanting to be a city administrator. I hold a master's degree in public administration from UW-Madison. And I think all of these experiences kind of would make me an effective administrator, given that I understand the operational and political decision-making that is required for the position. I decided to run for county executive and was encouraged to run for county executive because I think we need to improve communication. That's with the county board. There's been a lot of back and forth between the executive and the board over who's in charge, some micromanaging, communication with the other municipalities over distribution of ARPA money, over just communication or no communication. And lastly, with the public. I think government gets its legitimacy from involving the public in the decisions that it's ultimately making. I think the best thing that we can do as county government is make sure that we are stable, that we're able to take care and fund the services that are necessary to protect the most vulnerable in our county, and put ourselves in a position to be able to start addressing maybe some of the new challenges that we have. John and I have been talking a lot about housing, from workforce housing to affordability to homelessness, and I think that's going to be an increasing challenge for the county going forward. Again, I think my experience, background, and familiarity with the issues would make me a good candidate for county executive.
All right, thank you. It's time to move into our question session, and these have been submitted by members of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce themselves. And Gordon, you'll be getting this question first. Remember, we've got 2 minutes for each answer on these. Outline your agenda for change and include your top 3 priorities for the future of Winnebago County, and what do you think your role will be in making those happen?
Sure. I started getting into it a little bit, but in public service, especially in the legislature, communication has been at the heart of my role in public service. I think whether you're doing a strategic plan or whether you're doing a budget around priorities, it has to start with the public and public input. I think the one thing I've really learned in this campaign is a lot of people are not familiar with the county and what county government does. If you don't have direct interaction with the county, you may not know what it does, and you just want to know that it's being managed well and that it's been responsible. So we need to do a better job of engaging the public, reaching, whether you're urban, rural, or suburban, which we have all of the above in the county. We need to do a better job of reaching people with what the county does. Some of that has to do with being more transparent, and this isn't just a problem with the last 4 years. It's been going on for a long time, where if you look at the budget document, it complies with laws and accounting. It includes numbers, but the reality is we're just it's not digestible in a way that people can understand what the priorities are, what the numbers mean. We need to do countywide, create a culture where we're providing information that the public can digest. So communication and transparency are big parts of what I'm going to focus on and make sure that my department heads recognize that as well. From a priority standpoint, obviously we need to address UW-Fox. That's a big deal, because if we don't get it done, we could have the county could be saddled with more than $400,000 of payments just to keep an empty building afloat. I think we want to prioritize coming up with county funding for the HELP program, the homeless eviction loss prevention program, which was federally funded, which helps keep people in their homes that might be at risk of being evicted or losing their housing. And also come up with ways to fund Parkview staffing so we're able to fully have the beds full at Parkview Nursing Home, which is important to the community when we know we have demand for it. So those are some, broad priorities, but also some target priorities that are going to be in the first budget for me as county executive.
Thank you. John, your top 3 priorities and your role in making those happen.
Sure. Number one is UW Fox Cities campus, UW Fox Cities campus. We have to figure out the child care facility. We were really close to a deal. I was disappointed it kind of fell apart. However, I think it's still salvageable. It just takes a little bit of creativity, and I've been in contact with a lot of the partners. It's complicated because there's 2 people that are negotiating it. It's Winnebago County and it's Outagamie County, so it's always harder to negotiate when you have to deal with 2 boards of 36 to make these decisions. So I think right now our focus is to figure out a way to have a separation agreement or buy out Outagamie County so that we can get back to the table with some of these partners and make some amazing things happen up there. Second priority is really meeting people where they're at, whether it's veteran services, whether it's the health program, whether it's our public health. How do we get out and follow something they call the kibbutz model, where you have a central base and you figure out how to get out and meet people. We've done this with veteran services by bringing our office hours out to Winneconne and Omro, and we've met some amazing veterans that wouldn't come in. One of them being a 96-year-old World War II vet that didn't want to drive by the roundabouts. So us bringing our services out there was able to connect him. He didn't want the VA, he didn't need the VA his whole life, and he doesn't want it now, but he was having a hard time getting to grocery stores, doctor's appointments. We were able to connect him with a separate program in the ADRC, a blue card program, actually get him to these places and start helping them. Now with the Boys and Girls Club, our health department has office hours in the Hyde Center, so now we're figuring out how do we build our offices and bring them out to people. In the past, we've always done these big offices in Central City, but it doesn't help the rest of your county. So how do you put the offices in a van and get out and meet people where they're at, no matter where they live, no matter what neighborhood they're in, no matter what community they're in. Even if they're in the town of Rushford or Wolf River, we should be able to get out there and bring those services to them. So that is something I've been very passionate about. And then the last priority is really getting through priority-based budgeting. Now that we have a strategic plan, we have some 5 amazing pillars that we are to focus on. Those are housing, transportation, quality of life, economic development, and effective and efficient government. We can look at our programs to make sure that we're dialing in on what we need to do, where the needs are at, and freeing up resources to make sure that those essential services are sustainable long-term.
Next question will go to John first, and you mentioned UW Fox. Both of you have mentioned UW Fox. Menasha School District has decided not to purchase it for the use of child care and early education. So what do you think should be the county's focus for that facility going forward? And I want you to address also the future of the Barlow Planetarium and the Weiss Earth Science Museum as well. Are you willing to have the county foot the bill for continuing to operate those? So John, you go first.
Well, first, it's a really hard question for me to answer because I'm still in negotiations trying to make some of these things work. So we still have some options on the table. I can tell you one way or the other, the Barlow and the Weiss will exist. Where they exist is up in the air. I can tell you that I'm still having plenty of communications with the City of Menasha and the school district and other partners to make sure that maybe the original plan didn't work, but there's something else that we can get to. I'm in constant talks with Tom Nelson, the executive of Outagamie County. We had a little disagreement on the appraisal. When I look at Evergreen, just bought the Kimberly Clark campus, 43 acres on the water, zoned commercial for $3.2 million. I disagree with the fact that campus is worth $20 to $40 million. I think doing an appraisal for that isn't really the right way to go about it, especially because I was frustrated because it didn't get out that we were going to offer that campus to the school district for $1. $1. And when you say the word $40 million, it reminds the entire community of Menasha of the coal-fired steam plant where they invested $40 million and got nothing off of it. They are almost have that paid off with their debt levy. So it was a very emotional number. Now, I think that there is some salvageable things there. We do have some good plans. Of course, you always have a backup plan. You don't go to battle with one weapon, so we're ready to pivot with that. And we have some closed sessions with facilities today to discuss some of those options. And I am confident that we will have something amazing there for that community that is going to be the best and highest use for that campus.
Thank you. Gordon, the future of UW Fox, the Weiss, and the Barlow.
Yeah, obviously the county executive's engaged in the midst of it right now, and we have an election, and whatever way it goes, we'll inherit where negotiations are. Originally, I think maintaining it for public purpose, given that it was an educational facility, maintaining the cultural amenities that had been invested in, I think was a priority. I certainly supported the initial plan that the Menasha School District and the county were working out, especially with the priority of maintaining and expanding the existing childcare that was there, given that we know the demand there is for childcare and affordable childcare out there, and the possibility of even expanding that childcare, which is important for workforce development as well. The biggest thing from just a pure, financial responsibility standpoint is making sure that we get the best deal, possible, and don't get stuck a year from now holding the bag where we're paying to mothball a building that is not being utilized. I do want to make sure, and I would prioritize, there are a lot of big fans, especially in the northern part of the county, but also my children who appreciate the Weiss Museum and the planetarium. Would like to see those continue. The lot is bigger, and I don't know if you can parcel it out or not, or if you could develop any tax base there, or look at things like new housing or not. I'm not involved in those discussions, but maintaining the things that we've invested in from cultural amenities, but also prioritizing preservation of the childcare that is available now, and looking at expanding it. I've been happy with the things that have been floated. I was disappointed when the deal fell through, and I'm hopeful that we'll have resolution in the near future.
If I may, real quick.
All right. You'll each get 30 seconds. Go
Yep,
ahead.
just real quick, and to the families out there that are in the child care and the Menasha community, I just want to let you know that me and Gordon have been in constant contact. I've been letting him know where we're at in the negotiations. So no matter what happens on April 1st, there'll be a handoff, and I think we have a good plan, and he won't be coming in blind. So because I know this is a really big priority. It's bigger than both of us.
Or 30 more? That's fine. Okay, sounds good. Well, it wouldn't be a chamber candidate forum without asking about business climate here in Winnebago County. What's the county's role in terms of local economic development? What would you do in order to improve our county's ability to develop, attract, and retain jobs? Gordon, you go first.
Yeah, getting back to my opening comments, I think the best thing that county government can do is provide effective, efficient, and purposeful government decision making. I'm someone who believes in public institutions, who believes in public employees, but doesn't believe in defending the status quo. We need to continue to find better ways and innovative ways to do service delivery. We need to adjust to our population needs with an aging population. But by having a stable government, a well-run government, and a reputation for those things, I think that's the best thing that we can provide given the services that the county has relied on, especially in providing services for some of our most vulnerable citizens. We are seeing increased attention, especially as it relates to housing, homelessness, workforce housing, affordable housing, with the county being asked to play perhaps a bigger role. In Sheboygan County, they use some of their ARPA money to seed fund a forward fund that was matched by some private businesses to develop workforce housing, given that their businesses are having a hard time recruiting people to go work there. I know that our businesses in Winnebago County are facing the same challenge, and the county can play a role, perhaps with the Industrial Development Fund. We've got communities that are looking to grow and develop housing that might need some seed money. And I think there's some role that the county can play in sort of coordinating. One of the challenges we have in our county is we still have some divides between the northern part of the county and the Oshkosh and the rural parts of the county. We need to get the county thinking more collectively about what's good for one part of the county is good for other parts of the county. If it's housing, if it's workforce recruitment, if it's business development, that all grows the tax base. That's going to help the county provide funding for services. That's going to help provide jobs. And I think the county can help coordinate both local government, business leaders, and others. It can't do it alone, but I think we're seeing the county being asked to lead more in areas that it traditionally hasn't done, and I hope to continue in that.
John, your thoughts on the role of county government in economic development, and how do you retain and bring in new people to work?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big reason that I'm running for re-election. I took over mid-pandemic with a lot of crazy things coming my way as a newcomer to government with $33.5 million of ARPA dollars that we had tried to figure out to allocate, and went after a $10.3 million grant for the neighborhood investment grant to shore up some stability and to share those ARPA dollars, which became the Spirit dollars, with nonprofits because they are our partners in the safety net. It was so much triage my first 4 years, and now we finally have it to an organizational, functional organization that we can start going after some of these things. These are some of the things that I love to get my hands into. I was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce during Oshkosh Corp, the headquarters. I wasn't about to let a Fortune 500 company leave our community. I took a lot of arrows over a golf course that I loved personally, but I knew it was for the greater good of our community to keep it there. So I think the biggest thing that the county can do is housing. If you don't have houses, there are no people that can come move here and fill these jobs. If we can't figure out housing, we will not have a workforce. We can't figure out that role, that specific thing. And that's challenging because counties don't have a role directly in housing. So one of the first things I did with the Neighborhood Investment Grant is I was able to get Lou Shear from Avocap, who is the specialist in housing. And she has looked at all these different models that all these other counties are doing. She's had multiple meetings with me on for everywhere from homelessness to workforce housing to obtainable housing, how to even get in a house right now, and Habitat for Humanity to really figure out what our best model is. We are prepared to go to our Industrial Development Board to ask for $1 million and hopefully put some Spirit funds into there, and then go into the business community to really come up with a housing development program that's going to spur housing throughout the entire county at a rapid pace.
All right, thank you. I appreciate both of you holding to the 2-minute time limit on these questions, which are submitted by Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce members themselves. We hear from a number of local businesses that there's a lack of access to capital to help in financing expansion. What can Winnebago County do to become more competitive with some of the neighboring counties and competition across the country for economic development projects? And John, you are going first on this one.
Sure, I think the access to the capital was an issue. We had a revolving loan fund in our Industrial Development Board that had roughly $3 million in it, but we required municipalities to personally guarantee the loan. Menasha, again, was one of those communities that had a business fall through, and that community was saddled with paying back the loan for something that an asset they didn't get. So we have cut the ties of the personal guarantee by the municipality. It doesn't necessarily go on the municipality's debt levy anymore. And we've worked with GoEDC to have that revolving fund get out there. Now, there's not a lot of people accessing that fund right now. And I don't blame them. Interest rates are high. The economy is not extremely stable right now, and people are afraid of growth right now. They kind of want the dust to settle before they start investing in things. Now, locally as a county, do we keep looking at that $3 million to sit in this revolving loan fund that isn't being used? It hadn't had a single loan taken out of it the 7 years prior that I got in the office. We have a few loans that are looking at it now, but we have to do a better job. So again, I want to transfer $1 million of that from that revolving loan for business startups in industry and put it into housing. And I really think that is probably the better fit for it.
Gordon, county's role in business financing expansions?
I think this goes back to a couple of the questions we've been answering where the county is being asked to play a bigger role. These are not traditional issues that county government has had given the mandated services by the state and the programs that it traditionally administers at taking care of the most vulnerable population that we have in the county. That being said, I think the county needs to play a leading role both in coordinating our municipalities and working with our businesses. We know that all levels of local government have limits, tight limits, are restricted financially, and so we need to look at every tool in the toolbox. I know that GoEDC, I think, gets like $200,000 a year or something from the county. They would like, some additional resources. I think using some of the flexibility to maybe find more effective ways to do the revolving loan fund, as John mentioned, would be good. I don't know if what the appetite is for looking at, TIF for specific projects, but I think that's something that needs to be considered. But we've heard more about housing than individual access to capital. I think interest rates across the board are what are limiting people from developing projects, and they're always going to be looking for more cost-effective access to capital. Whether it's workforce housing, affordable housing, worker housing, or people that are living on the margins. Housing has been the bigger piece and what the county can do to provide resources for that. So I do think the county needs to play a leading role. It probably can't do it on its own, but we need to look at what it can do.
Thank you. Next question. Over the past several years, the county has built up a fund balance of $28 million. We also spent about $33 million in ARPA funds that were allocated to the county by the federal government as well. Should the county start spending down some of that fund balance because it is above the 16 to 20% set that the government fund subsequent year budget expenditures was kind of the goal on that? So should it be spent down, and what is the best way to do that? Gordon, you're first.
So this has been one of the challenges that you have in trying to parse through the budget. The information's all there, but it's not that easy to digest, and I say that as someone who was a budget analyst. The current budget's $6.8 million more in expenses than it brings in revenue, but we know that it will come in with more revenue than expenses. So we've been having these budgets that budget deficits, but the actuals come in more, which means that we end up having one-time money or a fund balance that's in there. That's allowed us to avoid having to go to the sales tax like 70 of the 72 counties have done. It allows us to cover those deficits. But I think we need to do a better job of being more transparent and accountable with a budget that actually forecasts what the actuals will be, so we get more accurate forecasting and that we have more accurate budgets. We know that costs are going up. We know that wages and benefits are going up faster than the county's resources, faster than the levy limits allow us. And so we need to be realistic that I don't know that we want to chew through the fund balance so fast and find ourselves in a position where we're on less stable financial footing, where we're faced with forcing the board to consider things like a sales tax going forward. I think what we first step would be to find more accurate ways to forecast what the actual expenditures are going to be, and then look at what the adequate and proper use of the fund balance is, and whether we could use some of that fund balance for some of the economic initiatives, housing initiatives, and other things that we've discussed this morning would be. So it has been going on for a decade plus under the prior executive, under County Executive Doemel, where we've had significant fund balances that have allowed us to move forward without having to consider things like the sales tax. But I think it'd be better from a forecasting standpoint if we had better, more transparent information.
John, plans for the fund balance.
Yeah, I think my favorite analogy is it takes 3 miles to turn an aircraft carrier. I agree that it was not transparent. It was frustrating to me. Every year we would look at the budget, and 3 years after the year, or 3 months after the year end, we would do this audit and spend zero time on it to actually figure out how we performed in the budget. And then we go into the next budget, looking at the last year's budget, and we were acting like we were broke, and we were telling our employees, "I'm sorry, we can't give you a raise this year because we're in a structural deficit." And then the audit showed that we had a surplus. This year in the budget, I showed from 2019 to 2023, we had 5 budgets passed that had a $65 million deficit. And in reality, we had a $27 million surplus in the same time. So again, it's an aircraft carrier. So one of the things I had to do is our finance director at the time, the position paid roughly $100,000, maybe a little bit less a year. How do you recruit somebody nationally that's an expert in government finance at that? That's one of the reasons we created the director of administration position, so I could go out and recruit nationally for somebody who's going to help us get on the right path. And that is Jamie Rauch, who came from Branson, Missouri, who had to figure out infrastructure of 10 million people on a population of 16,000. So now we are on the right path. Priority-based budgeting is the best practice for the GFOA, Government Financing Office Administration. I'm not sure what the acronym is. It's something like that. Smarter people than me to help us to right the ship. And now I think we're on the right path to make sure that we're accurate on this so we actually know where it is. As far as the $24 million fund balance, I think that's right in line. As far as somebody who ran a business, you want to make sure that you have roughly 3 months of operating expenses in your bank account. I think that's where we're at. So now we're looking to adjust our fund balance so it's accordingly, but we have to make sure we're not growing it. And if you are growing it, understand where you're growing it. And you have to figure out your fiscal health. Otherwise, again, you're telling your employees, sorry, we can't afford a raise when we can. And we're saying no to positions or programs that we need to do because we think we don't have any money. So we've right-sized a lot of that. And again, why I'm running for re-election, because now that we're getting to the truth, I'm ready to drive forward.
Thank you. Gordon, you mentioned that we're one of just 2 counties in Wisconsin that do not have a sales tax on there. Under what circumstances would either of you support that, or are you just dead set against it? John, you go first.
Yeah, I would support it for 2 things. Number one, it has to be a property tax reduction. We are way too dependent on property tax right now. My property tax is going up. I think of my mom who taught in the school district for 37 years plus. There is not an amount of buying habits she can do to make her property taxes go down. But there are things that she can do to make sure that her sales tax goes down. So here's the issue. Now that we went through this health assessment as a county, we figured out that we have roughly $64 million in deferred maintenance over the next 10 years just to maintain our current structures. That's not adding any new building, that's not doing anything else, and that does not include runways, boat launches, highways, parking lots, parks, all these things that aren't just structures. So we were cheap and conservative are not the same word. We were cheap for way too long, and we put ourselves in this really big fiscal hole with our facilities. So we have to figure a way forward to that over the next 15 years. How do we address that the best way, the most economical, the most sustainable way forward? So if the sales tax would allow us to do that and not loading up our debt levy, I would be okay with that. But we have to prove that that's the way it's going to be first. And then Gordon, we talked about you don't implement a tax just because you can. So while we're evaluating it, while we're coming up, we are preparing for our facilities committee today. 2 different ideas are passed to go down for the county for our facilities, and which one do they want us to drive on? Doing the buildings as we have and fixing them, or creating a new campus where we can have some of those efficiencies in staff and just operations in the future. So if that were the case, I would rather do a sales tax than burden the taxpayers with millions and millions of dollars in their debt levy, which would only make the taxes go up.
Gordon, your thoughts on sales tax?
Yeah, I think the way the statute's written, sales tax is supposed to go towards the levy to lower property taxes. The decision would be a decision that the county board would have to make. Our fund balance indicates that financially we don't need the sales tax. A lot of counties that moved to the sales tax, 70 of them, I think did so for, to be able to balance their budgets, made those decisions. Some did it to lower property taxes. The reality is it would be a decision to consider if there was initiative besides property taxes that they wanted to be able to fund. We've talked about, housing, economic development are those areas that, the county wanted to put new dollars into to be able to provide additional revenue for those things. I know municipalities in our county that feeling, particularly strapped, have pushed, a lot of, to the county to consider raising the sales tax and redistributing that money, to local government. Again, the county's not in a position where it needs to financially. It would be a decision by the board to consider some of those, options, including looking at funding some of the deferred maintenance needs that are out there. If they didn't want to add to the levy or the debt service levy in that, for that consideration, but it's not something that has to be done at that time. We're in a better financial place than I think a lot of those other counties that are out there. But again, it would be a decision for the county board ultimately to make, and we would have options to consider, being either proactive with those resources or looking at reducing property taxes. The reality, people spend money in Winnebago County and we don't capture that revenue. We have EAA, we have Life Fest, we have Waterfest, we have all these events that people pay here to spend money, but we don't capture that half cent. But when we all go to Outagamie County, we contribute that dollar. So, when you look at it that way, some people say we should be capturing the same benefit. But again, you don't raise a tax for the sake of doing so.
I wouldn't lead with that.
Thank you. It's possible that in its next term, the Wisconsin Supreme Court could overturn portions of Wisconsin's Act 10, which set bargaining limits on public sector unions. Do you support the repeal of Act 10, and how would you deal with that if it became a reality during your term? And Gordon, you're first.
Yeah, I do support the repeal of Act 10. I'm someone who opposed and voted against Act 10 during my time in the Assembly. We had collective bargaining rights with levy limits in place prior to Act 10, which is what we would have in place if Act 10 was repealed. So you would have restrictions on the amount that the county would spend, and you would be bargaining within those confines between county employees and the negotiating team for the county. It's important to remember that Act 10 doesn't just, that collective bargaining isn't about just financial issues. It's about non-financial issues, whether it's teleworking, sick leave, other things. It's about worker rights, and we are in the business of trying to recruit and retain the highest quality employees that we can to serve the public, and there's no doubt about the damage that Act 10 did to public employees, whether they were state employees, county employees, teachers, and the exodus from those professions that accompanied Act 10. So as an executive, I'd have an obligation to balance trying to put fair deals out there that would recruit and retain and be fair to county employees while representing the taxpayers that are out there. And if we couldn't reach a fair deal, it would go to an arbitrator who would then decide. The county sheriffs and deputies currently have collective bargaining rights, so we have some county employees that have the right to collectively bargain. This would simply allow other county employees those same rights. So again, this wouldn't lead to something out of line than what we had prior to Act 10. It would just bring us back to a place where we've got levy limits in place that limit how much the county can ultimately spend. It would just restore the rights of those employees to bargain under those conditions.
John, your thoughts on Act 10?
Yeah, I think Act 10 may have been abused by some. Act 10 did not prohibit you from doing the right thing. It did not prohibit you from giving employees raises. I think we were disingenuous and we weren't exactly honest with our budget in the past. And we told our employees that we were broke so you couldn't get a raise. Obviously, we could have. We could have treated our people better. We had to do wage reslotting in Winnebago County because we held people flat for 10 plus years. I had no hiring range. We got rid of our merit pay and we changed it up so that people could actually move along the range, and the range would actually move and they would move with it. We instilled PTO for some reasons. I had a county employee who her live-in boyfriend of 20 years passed away, and I couldn't give her bereavement time because they weren't technically married. She was on salary. Sometimes you just look the other way. You have them work out of office for a few days to get your house in order. So we changed these things to be more compassionate and to work more with our workforce, because employees are your number one asset. So we have to understand that. As far as Act 10 goes, if I were to go to the original agreement to have the entire benefit of the Wisconsin retirement system, that is close to a $5.2 million cost in Winnebago County. So that would be concerning. However, that's not how the world works. You would just start negotiating and you do new contracts with some of these employees. Now, unions are a very important thing in our world. There were drastic working conditions they had to overcome. My grandfather was one of those that fought hard for rights. But sometimes unions can be the issue too. When your union leaders no longer have the same scars on their hands as the workers. I've had an employee tell me sometimes I feel like I need a union for my union. So we should do the right thing for workers. I believe they should have the right to bargain collectively, because when you're a workforce, that's important. But I don't think it's easy as just turning a switch and going back to where it was before.
Thank you. Winnebago County has one of the largest county boards in the state. Would you be in favor of downsizing it? And John, you get to go first.
No comment. All right. I'll comment. First of all, it's not the position of the county executive. It's the board's decision, and I can see it both ways. I like a larger board because it gives you the ability for deeper representation. If we only had 10 people on our county board, you wouldn't have somebody that works at Quick Trip that's able to serve on the board.
right? And there's a beauty of that. There's a beauty of having a mechanic on your board making policy decisions, the beauty of having elected officials that are in the same struggles that we have, living paycheck to paycheck, to be representing their people on there. However, when it's so big, when you have positions that nobody runs for, where there's a write-in candidate, where somebody and four of their friends write their name, and now you have a legislative person on there, that's not representation either. Holly Mitchell is a good friend of mine. She was the past board chair in LA County. They have 5 commissioners for 10 million people. That is equally insane in my opinion. How does one person represent 2 million people? She has 32 employees for constituent services alone. So is 36 maybe a little bit too high? Maybe. Would 12 be too low? Probably. So what's the sweet spot in the middle so we can make sure that we have this republic where we have people that we can elect to represent our districts and be the voice for us? And so I see it both ways. It's hard to make. I would work with a board of 50. That's my prerogative, I guess.
Gordon, your thoughts on board size?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately a decision for the board, which means it's ultimately a decision for the public. I think the county had a conversation, 20 years ago where there was some from the public who were pushing for a smaller size in organized efforts. I don't know if they ended up knocking 1 or 2 off one. And it is the balancing act that I think John mentioned on representation, where the larger it is, the smaller number of people that get represented. But I also get disappointed when we have races that there's either a non-competitive election or we don't even get anybody running to fill the seat. And that's kind of an indication. But that gets back to my point about the need for more community engagement and to raise the profile of county government in general. If we're not getting people who are following the county, and we're not getting people that are knowing that there's a seat open that they could run for to serve, or if we're not getting competitive elections, that speaks to the fact that people aren't following, that people aren't aware of county government and the decisions that we're making. And I think that's part of why we need to do a better job of informing the public and educating the public and getting people out there. It's been interesting to knock on doors to ask people, what their experience with county government is, and have them kind of draw a blank. I think school districts, if they've got kids they can identify. I think with municipalities, their garbage gets picked up, probably their snow is plowed, police come. But with the county, especially if they don't have interaction with human services, or they don't know someone at Parkview, or if they don't live in a town that gets their snow plowed or have the sheriff, they're just not aware. And so, the more members you have, the better touch, the more you should know that person is. I'm just not sure that's happening right now. And again, that's something for the board ultimately to decide. But I will use this question as a push for all of us to try to promote and inform the public about what the county does and the importance of that, because of the legitimacy and trust that's needed for county government to operate effectively.
You both touched on what seems like a schism within Winnebago County government, where you have the Oshkosh contingent, you have the northern part of the county, I've used that, I heard that term used, and then the rural parts. What's your plan for, and you're both Oshkosh guys, what's your plan for reaching out and bringing those people into the fold, if you will, to feel like they are an important part of Winnebago County government? And Gordon, you're first.
I think it's got to be about regular contact. I know the northern part of the county, this has been going on, forever. I went to the NENA council meeting last week, went to the town of NENA meeting last night and spoke, introduced myself, made a commitment to build on those relationships if elected. It's about making sure that from the ground level we're involving those municipalities and those communities, but it's also about doing the outreach necessary with when I was in the legislature, I did regular office hours, regular town hall forums, regular budget forums, to try to make sure that we were going where the people are, so that they were aware of what county government was up to and how it impacted them. And I think that's the kind of proactive outreach that's ultimately going to be necessary. And that would also go to the rural communities, who I think it's a try. We are truly urban, rural, suburban, and then north-south in the divide. And that also goes to the county board members as well. We need to do a better job of getting them to recognize that they're part of Winnebago County, but also getting everybody on the board and all the municipalities in there to recognize that's what's good in one municipality, perhaps with an initiative supported by the county, is good for the county overall. People live and work, somebody that works in Oshkosh, may live in Neenah and vice versa. So if we get, an economic development project or a housing project, that benefits the whole county. That can help grow the tax base for the whole county. And that's really what we should all be focused on is growth and not getting territorial. So that would be my, approach, would be to listen, to communicate, and to have regular contact and to ask how I can best support, their communities.
John, your thoughts on unity?
Yeah, I think, well, for the record, I grew up in the town of Oshkosh. When we were first married, we lived in Neenah above Joseph Shoes, and now I reside in the city of Oshkosh. So I've kind of lived a lot of this area in Winnebago County. Yeah, it's hard because it's the population's cut into thirds. So there's roughly 65,000 people in Oshkosh, 65,000 people in Neenah, Menasha, Fox Crossing, and then 65,000 people Winnebago County, Amro, and West. So it is divided, and it's not just the county. There's this dividing line with a lot of things. Fox Cities Chamber, Fox Cities Convention and Visitor Bureau, that Neenah, Menasha, and Fox Crossing all belong to that. The Fox Cities Housing Coalition, it's not even part of the Winnebago Land Housing Coalition. So the Winnebago Land Housing Coalition that actually addresses some of this homelessness and stuff doesn't cover all of Winnebago County. So there's multiple dividing lines on this other than just the county. Now, again, this is where the county board needs to play a part, and they need to be a good team with the executive. They're the representatives. They're the ones that are supposed to be going out and having the town halls and talking to their district of 4,200 people to bring those ideas back to the committees and the county board and represent that. So that was the struggle the first few years, is getting them off of picking the color of the paint and back up to this policy and budget decisions where they should be. They should be at the high level, the 30,000-foot level. Are we doing the right thing? Am I representing the community, instead of figuring out what type of truck we need to buy for our highway department, and they didn't like the color of the paint, and I need this exact model that you need to drive. That's not their decision. That's a decision of the executive and the highway commissioner. But they need to be a better partner representing that, to kind of bring in that brand together. Winnebago County is such an amazing place. We have 5 lakes, we have rivers, we have beautiful assets. If we can figure out how to build that brand, we will grow. Our economy will thrive. There will be people, if we can figure out how to build houses, people will move. Who wouldn't want to live here? It's an amazing place. So it's just getting everybody to work together and having the board help us do that.
All right, thank you. Again, many of our questions have been submitted by Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce members themselves. There are current federal executive orders threatening to cut federal funding for entities that continue to utilize DEI programs. What's your plan to deal with that? And John, you go first.
Well, I mean, this is a tough one. This is where I think institutional neutrality comes in with government. Government should be about the mission, not so much the message. I mean, one of the strengths of Martin Luther King Jr. is that he wasn't a legislator. He wasn't a senator or a congressman. He was a man that spoke to people's heart, that believed that we had some moral code in the country that we need to stand by. I mean, the great quotes, if slavery is right, nothing can be wrong. If segregation is right, nothing can be wrong. But it didn't come from the legislator, right? So we need to focus on the mission. And sometimes when you bring those cultural things in the government, you start jeopardizing people and programs. And it becomes an emotional thing versus a mission thing. So am I going to say that racism isn't out there in the county? Absolutely it is. There are all kinds of biases that go beyond race. It goes to religion. It goes to other things, right? I can't legislate the heart. Again, something Martin Luther King told me. But I can tell you some of these people are living in some of the most impoverished neighborhoods we have that have lead paint. They're not necessarily getting to the doctor, getting their hearing checked. So if I say, what can we do to remediate lead? What can we do to make sure that we're meeting the health outcomes of these kids? What can we do to improve the outcomes so they actually have a chance? And we've switched it to the mission, and we've actually gotten people to invest in that. So right now there is some threats going out. We have no programs or people in Winnebago County that are in jeopardy because we focus on the mission. We have no programming in the county that's looking to get cut off because we separated the heart. We went to actually just helping people. I think the issue with equity is people just don't understand it. Everybody can go fishing, but can they afford the fishing permit? Do they have a rod? Do they have a lure? What are the things that we can do to kind of help them, give them the access to the opportunity? That's what equity is about. And sometimes I think we don't understand that, and then it becomes emotional, and then it becomes a target. So if you get away from the messaging and you just focus on the mission, a lot of those things aren't in jeopardy. And I think we should help people. We should help people that are suffering out there. We should help people to rise above. We need to help lift them out of the safety net, and that's been my focus. Fun times.
Gordon, executive orders on DEI.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been unnecessarily politicized and distorted as an issue. I think the county needs to take a proactive role at making sure that it's doing everything possible to recruit a workforce that reflects the population that it serves, to get the most talented people, but also to make sure, our county is becoming increasingly diverse. We have the second highest percentage of refugees, I think, after Milwaukee, and we're getting more diverse just in other ways in terms of people choosing to locate here. And again, that's just good HR policy. I think the county executive spoke that we don't have anything on the books that's going to be result in us having lost funding. I know the county did have a diversity affairs commission that was dissolved 2 years ago. That was a board created commission that was just for educational purposes. I think that was a mistake, but it probably got wrapped up in the same politicization that we're seeing coming out of Washington right now. Again, it's in our best interest to broaden probably underrepresented populations in terms of who we're trying to serve, in terms of who we're trying to recruit, in terms of who we're trying to understand in our community. And I don't think we should give up on those efforts, and we should try to avoid getting wrapped up in labels and in non-productive debates that are out there. So, in my administration, we'll do everything possible to do the right thing for the right reasons.
Thank you. This week we're marking the 5-year anniversary of the Safer at Home order that was handed down because of COVID-19. If there was to be another pandemic of that type, what would be your strategy or plan? And Gordon, you go first.
Yeah. So I'm someone who believes in letting managers manage. We have directors and department heads at the county level to provide their expertise, and that's what I would do, would be to consult with the public health department on what is the best course forward to be able to make sure that we're keeping the population safe. Now, the county board took action to, stop directives directly and make sure that the county board had a say to be able to approve any public health order, I think, such as that, to make sure that there were other voices heard, such as businesses and others. I'm assuming and hoping that the county board will take that role in balancing act seriously. I think having been through this once recently, 5 years ago, we're in a better position, hopefully, to understand the trade-offs involved of such actions. But again, at a time when we're seeing measles deaths, when we're seeing bird flu in animals and potentially in humans, we may find ourselves in a position again where public health is going to play an increased and a leading role, and we need to make sure that we are listening to public health officials and explaining to the public the trade-offs and risks involved, while being fair and understanding and realistic about what the impacts of those orders would be on businesses and on lives.
John, pandemic response.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to micromanage people at some times. That's one of the reasons I ran for office. I was out helping people in the community. Not everyone was safer at home. We had families struggling with food insecurities. We had families struggling with all kinds of other things, and we weren't meeting those needs. The Oshkosh Area School District had 7 sites that they set up to pick up food, and none of them were in the neighborhoods that they needed to be. So we worked with Oshkosh Kids Foundation. We set up 7 other sites where the poverty actually was to bring people out. With Heroes of Oshkosh, the other things that we were doing, even with Zeronis with the food boxes, teaming up with Planet Perk and the food pantry and the VFW to deliver 400 plus 80-pound boxes of food every week, and we did that on $2,000 a month because gas was cheap. That was the year Human Services had a $6.5 million surplus in their fund. So we didn't get out and we didn't meet people where they're at. We were so focused on one thing that we forgot about all these other things. Domestic abuse was a thing when people were safer at home, and we were recommending that the Christine Ann Center shut down. That is, you have to balance those. So do I respect the health department? Absolutely, 100%. We have some great people there. We have some fantastic people that are working there. They're experts, right? But I also have to balance that with the social good, right? And as far as the community, we're so quick to judge each other, not understand the situation, that if somebody had a mask or didn't have a mask, we were ready to have a fight. There was a woman that I had to go grocery shopping for. She was abducted and sexually abused with duct tape over her mouth, right? She couldn't get a mask to her face, and she got kicked out of grocery stores. She couldn't shop for her kids because we wouldn't just stay an extra 3 feet away from her and let her do her business and survive. So we need to get away from that emotional stuff, and we need to be one of those leaders that leads courageously and compassionately. Winnebago County is one of the very few counties that didn't open up an emergency operation command. We did not open up an EOC. We were a very passive role, so we need to be more active if something like that ever were to happen again.
We have come to the end of our appointed time, so each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and because John went first to open, Gordon, you can go first for close.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank the Oshkosh Chamber for the opportunity and all of everybody who is in attendance today. I'm Gordon Hintz. I'm asking for your support on April 1st. Again, I think it's time that we get improved communication amongst the county board with local officials and local communities throughout the county. So especially when it comes to resources, planning, and just better communication. I think we need more transparency or more communication with the public as well, and public engagement. I think we need more transparency, especially as it comes to budget and providing information to the public so that we can best engage them. And I think we also need more accountability. I think over the last few years, the intent behind a lot of the initiatives from the executive has been good. It's been the execution that has left a lot to be desired. When there's been questions raised about from the board and others about where things are, we've heard I need more staff, I need more consultants, and we've seen those things happen. But I don't know after 4 years if we're any more better. We still have a fund balance that's large without any more details on our forecasting and where that's heading. And that's the same situation we were in 4 years ago. We don't need a sales tax. We have a large fund balance. I think we have the opportunity to improve communication, to improve transparency, to improve accountability, and make our county in a position where we're stable, where we can reassure people that we're in a position to do some of the proactive things that we're talking about in the areas of housing development, in the areas of economic development, to put ourselves in a position where we're working together collectively. And I think I've got the skill set, education, and background. I operate, again, whether you live in an urban, suburban, and rural area, I think I can be a county executive that can serve all of these people, and I hope to have your support on April 1st.
John, closing statement.
Yeah, thank you. Transparency and communication with the county government is an issue that has been going on for a long time in a lot of different counties across the entire nation. How many of you have ridden the city bus in Milwaukee? Nobody. It's a county bus. Nobody knows what the county does in any state and throughout the country. And this was an issue with James Coughlin. So there's a book out there called The Diary of a County Executive. He was so frustrated, nobody knew what county government did, that he did a slideshow, back in the projectors times. And he actually got a NACO award for that. And one of the frustrations is it still didn't help anybody know what county government does, because we are a service. That is what county government does. We are a service model. We're not a message model. We are an arm of the state. We do kind of what we're told. We meet people where we're at, and we're supposed to do that objectively to the best of our abilities. In the last 4 years, I have done everything to make sure that we are telling the truth, that we're accountable, that we understand the resources not only available to us directly, but our partners out there, whether it be the Christine Ann Center, Solutions Recovery, Inc., or Habitat for Humanity, all the amazing partners we have in there, and really kind of building that map and how do we drive forward together. It's not about me, it's about people. It's not about party, it's about people. And I'd like to thank Gordon, actually, because I think this has been one of those campaigns where we've actually been decent to each other, right? And I think people need more of that. We need less of the divide. We need more of coming together, because this hatred that is going on between sides of people and families is destroying us as a nation. So I'm asking to be somebody, to be that objective arbiter, to be that neutral person in the ring that's going to fight for even the things that are hard, whether it's building a homeless shelter or naloxone vending machines in our community to save lives. I'm always going to try to do what's best. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna make mistakes, and I'm gonna admit that. I'm gonna get back up, and I'm gonna try to do the next right thing. I've done 4 years of that consistently. So I'm asking for your vote in Winnebago County to keep driving us in the right direction, to make us more responsive, and make Winnebago County the best possible place for me and my wife to raise our 5 daughters.
All right, John, I appreciate it, and thank you to both candidates for joining us here today and answering all of our questions. Just a reminder that the election itself is on Tuesday, April 1st. Early voting is underway. And I would also like to thank the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's candidates forum, and also the Venture Project for being the venue today in their very nice historic building here in downtown Oshkosh. You can listen to a replay of this debate on WHBY coming up at 5 o'clock this evening as part of your News Now, my show, and also we'll have it for you on our YouTube channel as well. Again, thanks to everyone in personal attendance today, and don't forget to vote on April 1st.